Hey team, welcome back to another incredible episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader Podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and today I am joined by my friend Tyler Dickerhoof, and you guys are in for a treat. He's a dairy guy, he's a successful business guy, he's a dad, he's a husband, he does all the other important things. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. Glad to be here with you, Mark. As you had mentioned, and now I'm thinking back that several years ago when we talked last on your podcast, and glad to be back. And as you know, anyone watching, if you see the video, you see you might see some steers walking around the background. So most people get alarmed by that. They're like, "What is going on?" Like, for hopefully you and your viewers, listeners, they get that.
Yeah. No, our people would find that to be abnormal if you didn't actually.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, here's the thing. I just hope, and they're laying down over there. It's usually when you're like, dude, are they getting out? Like, did they all of a sudden get out? And it was like, hey, I got to end, Mark, because I got to go chase some cows. I haven't had to do that yet, but there are days where, I can see them out my different windows and I'm like, I hope I don't have to like end a show because I got to go chase cows.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. I love it. All right, man, you get the same opening question before we get too deep into it. What does it mean for you to be intentional, Tyler?
Be purposeful in action. For many years I've embraced my podcast, my business, the impact driven leader. And so when I think about intentionality, it is having purpose to make an impact. That's me personally. That's what I live for, desire. I was talking to a friend yesterday at lunch and he's going through this middle stage of life, similar age to you and I, and he's really going and balancing between this evolution of success into significance. Mm-hmm. And when I think, as you bring up being intentional and having intentionality, it is understanding that our actions result and that further kind of solidifies our beliefs. And if we are intentional about our thoughts, our actions, the results, that further drives our beliefs. Like, hey, what are we doing every day to make a difference? And so that idea of intentionality to me and being intentional is having a direct desire that my actions are going to yield results that are meaningful, not to me, but to my family, to those around me, to those that trust me, to those that, are willing to be led by me.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Beautiful, man. And I see you going through, I see you going through the LinkedIn feed all the time. I mean, you're super intentional with your cadence. You're super intentional with the quality of content that you're putting out there. Well, give us a little bit of backdrop into, who's Tyler Dickerhoof? What do you do? Like, what is the podcast? Yeah. What's the movement about?
I'm a farm kid. I grew up on a dairy farm in Ohio. I was in 4-H. I was in FFA. I judged at Cornell University, dairy judging, did all those things. For 13 years, I was dairy nutritionist in California. First 5 years with Cargill. The other 8 was my own. And along that way, through enough life and different challenges, realizing, what am I doing this for? Like, man, is it always going to be this hard? And that led me into the place of seeking mentorship. And the mentor that I was fortunate to spend a lot of time with, still spend a lot of time with, John Maxwell. And it was just kind of a random circumstance. And I can sit and say he is one of 2 people that have probably impacted my life more than I can understand others. And it was kind of learning from him, you see this massive leadership author and, he's sold probably pushing 40 million books now and, is the worldwide leadership expert. And as you get to know and you understand his story, he wasn't a very good leader at one point. Like, people tell stories of like, John, it's all about you. And I'm like, ooh, I had that too. And what I learned is people saw it was all about me because of how I was presenting myself to guard the fears and insecurities that I had. And so working through that. And so that's kind of the work that I do today is help others recognize their fears and insecurities, own how they show up, and then reframe their mindsets and beliefs that those insecurities drive. And so that was a transition, a journey that I had to go through. And so when you talk about being on LinkedIn, when I talk about, social media, first off,
Mhm.
I have a team that does that for me. I hate it. I suck at it. I don't enjoy it. And so grateful to have people do what I'm not good at and embrace that, delegate that. So props to all those people that have helped me. If it's up to me, yeah, I don't do it enough. And it's partly it's being that, I don't want to say beacon, but that light of, hey, we don't have to succumb to our fears and insecurities and feel like they're always going to overwhelm us. And
Mhm.
so that's the biggest thing that I hope to share with people, and be that example through those platforms.
Yeah. What would you say? I mean, let's try to qualify that and make that real for
Yeah.
people. So, what would be a
Yeah.
symptom that's coming up in someone's life that's maybe this isn't common language in their world, right? But they're probably running from some fears and insecurities or hiding them in
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
subconscious way. So, what would be a symptom that's showing up in life?
You walk into a room and all of a sudden you feel like people are like, back away, right? That, for me, I was really intense. And I can be really intense. And I should say I wasn't. I can still be. And walk in the room and you kind of feel like, I don't know if I'm welcome here. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if all of a sudden it's a warm embrace. And it's usually because your intensity is too much. I had a
Mm-hmm.
person in one of my roundtable groups that I lead, and they described intensity in this way. And I think it's so fitting: is intensity is like a bright light. Like I have studio lights here, so you can, see
Mm-hmm.
me, and if they have serve a purpose, they're fine. But all of a sudden, I walk into your bedroom at 3 o'clock in the morning, Mark, and I shine one of those lights. You're like, make it stop. And that's an
Mm-hmm.
example of intensity. And I see that a lot, especially in business. They're like, hey, you got to drive to get things done. But when people are all of a sudden like turning away, they're backing off, they're like shutting down, your intensity is too much. It's a bulldozer. Another way that I see insecurities and fears really show up in people is when, say, for example, you need to have a tough, conversation with, say, a client, right? Maybe you have a client that, I remember back doing nutrition, and I had a dairy that, they were past due. Dairy industry can be tough. Finances are tough. Cash flow is tough. And, you know, there are times where like, yeah, we can't pay all the bills, and it is what it is. And, so instead of avoiding it, meaning I know I can't pay it, I'm just not going to talk to the salesman. I'm going to act like I'm, don't answer the calls, hide in the office. I remember one time there's, people talking about, as you drive up to a dairy, you know their truck is there. You all of a sudden you can see through the window that they're in there, but they don't open the door. The door is locked. They're like avoiding. That's an example of insecurity. It's avoidance. It is
Yeah.
inactivity of doing what needs to be done. So there's just two examples of how fears
Mm-hmm.
and insecurities show up in our everyday world, and they can show up in leadership capacities. They can show up in between spouses. They can show up in between kids and
Mm-hmm.
parents. So it's not universal in one area. It's universal as a human condition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've suffered from both too along the way. I can just think of times when I had literally employees would finally come forth with something, and they're like, Mark, I just wasn't sure how you were going to react,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And on one hand, it's like, man, I just tell me the truth,
Yeah.
right? But then, like, do they feel like they can without consequence?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that wasn't true with my dad growing up. Like, there was never not a consequence,
Yeah.
and
Well,
and,
and
and, and so that, yeah.
here's the thing that, so part of my work and where I recognized my insecurities were a challenge was, oftentimes when I was, work relationships, right? And the, either managing people, clients, whatever it may be. And it was always this, it was just hard. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, that's the way business is. And it's like, well, it doesn't have to always be hard, and realize it was hard because my intensity made it hard, that it was hard to connect with. And, that's the first premise of leadership, in my opinion, is, well, the second is you have to have a vision, but then if you can't connect with people, it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to work. It's not going to. And so if there's a barrier in connection, and what I found is how my insecurities showed up was that barrier. And several
Mm-hmm.
years ago, I was doing an event with a friend, for a college fraternity brother who was kind of leader of a help desk international. Anyways, this is not a great way to start the story, but that's what it was. I'm doing this webinar for him right after COVID, and I'm going to do a presentation about it's not about you, and kind of this idea leadership isn't about you, but I needed a better way to describe it. So I go to my son's soccer practice, thinking about it while I'm there. I get back and I'm like, oh, insecurities are like walls. And so I came up with the 4 walls of insecurity. I've talked about intensity. I talked about inactivity. The other one, which I would say kind of you related to, is insensitivity. Like, I don't want to go talk to him because if Mark's not going to take this well, or if your response is just freaking do the job. Like, I don't care about your problems. And so, intensity, inactivity, insensitivity. The other one is isolation. And I oftentimes find this in different personalities where it's like, man, I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be held accountable. I don't want to do difficult. I'm just going to take and isolate myself from the situation. A little different than inactivity, because inactivity is, what needs to happen. You just don't want to do it because it'll turn out bad. Isolation is, I'm just going to, it's kind of like the classic Homer Simpson meme where he like backs into the hedges, and it's that example. And so it's, you kind of express that, all right, the intensity and sensitivity. It's like, I found all 4 of those show up for me. Right. And as I walk people and train through it, I've learned that there's one wall I lean against the most in my house, but the house also has corners. And so, intensity, inactivity kind of be in that same corner. And as I've shared that with people, I've shared that in keynotes, starting to give language to those barriers that cause restrictions in our ability to connect and interact with others. Going back to, where this all started, it's, if we can recognize those, then we can start to change our relationships.
Right.
And that's what it's all about. Whether you're in sales, whether it's leadership, whether it's, spouses, coaching, it's all about relationships. Every bit of it.
Yeah. One of my wife's favorite sayings, she leads all of our executive coaching in the business now. And she said, every problem is a relationship problem.
Yeah.
Everything, every problem that you have. I don't care. Bring me any problem that you have in your business, whether it's finances, whether it's not closing deals, whether it's people quitting, engagements low, whatever, like it's always a relationship problem. And here's the interesting thing is that relationship begins with the relationship that you have with yourself.
100%.
Man,
there. I can't. That is, I think that is so pivotal to understand. That that I made this comment once. Is like, if you can't love yourself, how can anyone else? No one else can love you enough to get over the fact that you don't love yourself. And that was a bit of a journey that I had to walk through and go through. And one of the great moments that I had to reflect back on. So when I was 14, I had a younger brother die in a farming accident. I was 14, he was 3, I drove over him. And the way I responded to that was with a lot of intensity. Is I will just put this armor, these walls around me, and that's how I'm going to protect myself, and I'm just going to push myself through. Yeah. And, the element of, as we're talking about, if you can love yourself, I'm fortunate, I'm blessed as a person of faith. I can give no other reason why, to this day, I've never had an ounce of guilt. It was an accident. It was a plain accident. It was an accident. That's it. And, when I share that with people, they're like, really? I'm like, I don't have any other way to explain it other than it's God, that I don't have this overwhelming guilt. Now, do I miss him? Yeah, all those things. But this guilt does not imprison me. But there was also a process of really understanding my fears and insecurities that, hey, I had to learn to accept who I was and what I was good at, and that I had value. Yeah. And that was one of the biggest hurdles that I had to overcome, is this, fear, this insecurity that I don't have value. I was, not real athletic. I was small. I grew up on a dairy farm. As a lot of your listeners know, it's funny now, you walk around people and they all love Yellowstone. They all want to own horses. They all want to own a ranch. They all want to live Carrie Underwood in Nashville. You go back 30 years ago when you and I were kids, Mark, and it's like, man, you got made fun of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so again, in that era of learning and growing in this, man, you're a dumb farmer. You have no value to us.
Yeah.
And then starting to come back to what your question was, in all of that, how could I love myself? How could I appreciate myself? Because my society around me didn't say, man, we value you.
Mm-hmm.
I had to understand, I had to value who I was first to be able
Mm-hmm.
to understand that people did value it, just not in the way that I perceived that I would be welcomed.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of this whole ideas of relationships, man, if we can't appreciate, recognize our fears and insecurities, own how they show up, and then create mindsets and beliefs that help us love ourselves,
Yeah.
it's really hard for me to sit down and have a conversation with you and appreciate you, because I'm sitting here saying, I don't even love myself. How much can I care about you and value you?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's really kind of a massive mental reset to say, oh, yeah, that's real.
Big time. And that's one of the biggest things, one of the biggest challenges that we see our clients face, right? Is being okay with who I am, being alone. I literally
Okay.
have people that just struggle to be by themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Isolation is not the issue. It's like I can't be alone with myself because then I have
Yeah.
to sit and think about my own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And then, it's isolation we think works because it's going to take us away from the problem. But as you mentioned, all we're doing is numbing, right? And that can be through addictions, substances, whatever else. That can be through interactions. But if we're not willing to own it, like what's driving that feeling, like you're talking about, if I'm not willing to say, I hear this, and especially when I get to talk to agricultural groups, I love it. And, you come back to the comment that all problems are relationship problems. You used to joke that when I was doing nutrition, it's like there were never 4-legged problems on dairies. There were always 2-legged problems, always 2-legged problems. And, unfortunately in that role, I thought, hey, my job was for the cows. I'm like, nope, it never was. Never was about the cows. It was always about the people. And when you come back to this idea as well, I know people that especially work in ag, and maybe people listening, it's them or their clients are like, man, I work with animals, so I don't have to work with people. Like, you're missing out on life. That's not what it's about.
Right.
I mean, I got cows. I've learned a lot from cows. I've learned about how to interact with people from my cows, but yet those don't matter as I'm raising steers to be slaughtered to sell to people if it's not about the relationship with people. And I think that's been one of the great confounders in agriculture, is there's a lot of people that say, oh, I don't want to deal with people, so I'm just going to do the animal side of it. I'm like, you're underselling yourself and you're making it way harder. It's not about the animals. It's all about the people.
Could you go? I want to clarify that and qualify that just a little bit more. So so why is it more? It's not just, I mean, I know people who would much rather be with their dog or be with their cows or be with their pigs or whatever, because the pigs don't talk back or they don't, they're in some way, shape or form more comforting. They're not as abrasive. There's all these things, right? Like you can train, right, that animal to do certain things, and you can work with it and love on it and contribute to it. And it's probably, maybe in some ways, it's less likely to let you down. Is that why people end up wanting to do that? Because they're tired of being let down? Is that an insecurity or a fear stemming back to the original, the nexus of this whole conversation?
Absolutely. It's, this idea of, going back to, let's say, for example, hey, you have a small farm, right? Maybe you have, 30, 40 cows, maybe you have a horse or whatever. You can do all the work on your own. Like, I grew up in this family, right? I grew up where oftentimes in my family's dairy, we had 50 dairy cows. And for the most part, the last several years that we had our dairy, the entire workforce was myself, my older sister, both my parents. That's what it was. And it was often because, employees are just so difficult. Why? Well, they're difficult if you make them difficult. Now, there are difficult people, right? I'm not going to step away from that. But if you think working with people is difficult, then it's going to be difficult because you don't have a mindset where, oh man, I can bless someone. I can coach them. My wife and I, several years ago in one of our businesses, had this idea. I'd much rather be an incubator than an incinerator. I'd much rather have somebody work for me, learn lessons, go and launch their own business rather than have somebody and burn them out to where they're miserable and they leave. That's not working for anyone. And the difference in mentalities, if I incubate someone, that means I got to care about them. And if I don't care about myself first, how am I going to care about them? And if I'm just trying to take from them, it's not going to work for either one of us. So back to your point of why do we end up falling into that pattern? Because we're unwilling or maybe just unaware of the opportunity to address our fears and insecurities. And the problem is once we address them and they're real, then we got to deal with them. And we got to deal with how they show up. So, I can walk around and say, hey, I'm just an ass, right? And I'm just, well, that's just my insecurities showing. And I can say, well, that, keeps people from me. Like, dude, that's a lonely life. And it's not fun. It's not enjoyable. And, you don't get the rewards, the relationships, the fun out of life. And it's constantly because we're unwilling to address those fears and insecurities. And here's the biggest thing. Biggest thing for anyone listening, and maybe you're relating to that. It's like, yeah, I work with horses. I train horses, so I don't have to work with people. Okay. Maybe that challenge came from a situation when you were younger where someone told you a lie, and unfortunately that lie is perpetuated. That happens for a lot of people. I see that all the time. But the next person that you interact with and you're like, that's why I don't work with, people. They have just as many fears and insecurities as you. And the manifestation is what made it difficult to work with them. And when we can stop and realize that, oh, we all have insecurities and own them and admit them, people are like, oh, dude, I knew it was something. Thank you for finally admitting it.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you can have a relationship. You can have a connection. There's an empathy there where it's like, yeah, I understand what you're going through, man. Like that sucks. That's difficult. Like I've had stuff too. And when you can be vulnerable enough to do that, and there's not this pretense, there's not this, we're trying to show, and everything gets easier. Everything gets easier.
Yeah. The walls start coming down.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I've learned is the walls will always be there, but we start to put windows in them. We put windows in them so we can see through them. And I had to learn that because I thought, oh, we can take these walls down. I'm like, no, the house is always going to be there because the next time your insecurity gets triggered, boom, that wall comes. It's there.
Right.
It's do I have a window to say, hey, sorry, Mark, sorry, I'm too intense. Like it's too much. I get it. I can own it. Thanks, dude. Thanks for admitting it because we all knew. We all knew.
Yeah. I love the alliteration and it's such a visual statement to say that I'd rather be an incubator than an incinerator. Like you said that like 5 minutes ago and it's still resonating through my mind. Because that's so much of what here, I'll give you just a really quick real life example. Literally happened on a coaching call just this morning, not 6 hours ago. And we're in a conversation. We have a couple of leaders on here who represent a significant number of people. So whatever these guys are doing has a ripple effect, whether they know it or not, through a lot of people in a significant organization in the agriculture industry. And we were reporting back some of what we're hearing from their people because we have a bunch of their people in our coaching program, and they're saying, we're reporting a very, very high burnout, a very big issue, and trying to create more, enough work-life balance. And I know, like, man, Tyler, like it's so overdone. Everybody's talking too much about work-life balance and all this stuff. But what's real is like the number of people that come to my coaches and saying like, hey, I'm getting a divorce, or I'm about to go get a divorce, or my wife just left me. We have at least 6 of those a year out of our 150 to 200 employees that are in our coaching programs. That's a significant percentage, given that we're only with them for that one little year of their life. It just happens to come up this year while we're working with them. So we see a lot of it. And we also get a lot of executives that are in our executive program that are maybe struggling or have been struggling, with that or something related to that, or they're overcoming it, or they're trying not to get divorced for the third time or something like that.
Yeah.
These kind of things are common, unfortunately. Okay. But on this call this morning, what the dudes, we were talking about this, and then he made some comment. He's like, he's like, these phones are the thing. Like we have them. And it's like, we have this sort of need that's like, if we're not getting like email, you can put an out of office thing, but now we have all these text threads and these text groups, and customers are texting us, and we got group texts for different projects that we're doing within the company, right? And nobody wants to be known. Nobody wants to get branded as the guy or the gal who's not responsive. And that was one example, but it's like, you don't want to.
How old was this person?
I would say late 40s, early 50s.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay. So
sure.
relatively our age, give or take.
Gen X,
right?
Stereotypical, but that's them. But so this is what's going on. Like, nobody wants to be the one on the team who's getting branded as the guy or the gal who doesn't respond to things. And text messages are coming through at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, because they're on East Coast and they've got West Coast employees. Sure. And so you've got stuff that's coming through, right? If I'm in North Carolina and if you're in the Pacific Northwest, right? I'm up at 6 a.m. and I'm starting to hammer stuff. It's 3 a.m. for you. Yeah. Right. And then if you're working until 7 o'clock at night, that's 10 p.m. for me. And I should be making love with my wife, not texting Tyler.
Yeah, totally.
At night, right? And not be worried, not having that buzz go on, right? Try to get your wife to relax when you got a buzz going on in the background in your bedroom, right? Because your phone is going off. Like there's nowhere to relax. And this is the stuff that gets
no downtime.
And it all comes back to it's like we do it because we're afraid of what other people will think of us if we don't. We're insecure, 100%. Right, about how we will show up or how we should be perceived, or we feel guilty, right, by not responding within a certain amount of time. But here's what so on a collective scale, and now it's not just you, right, and one person, it's everybody in the damn team. And I think most leaders are unintentional. Maybe they mean well, but they're not intentionally executing against the knowledge of like, hey, how I respond, when I respond, that shit matters.
I think that point, I have a friend of mine, her name is Dr. Sasha Shilcutt. She's lives in Omaha. Mm-hmm. She is a cardiovascular anesthesiologist. She shared with me one day talking about this very subject. She goes, I want my people to have boundaries, right? I want my people to have boundaries. I understand if you're, from 7 till 7, whatever it may be. And then she goes, but I'm working away at 9 o'clock at night. I'm sending messages here and there. And like, those boundaries are meaningless. You can tell them, but your actions are different. And, it's a classic. People do what you do, not what you say. Right. And so I think I mentioned to you, I'm working in the process of my book, which is part of the curriculum that I've written and developed. In the chapter that I just got done reading yesterday. And I share this element called the empathy spectrum. So the empathy spectrum is kind of this idea that empathy is on a spectrum. One side, you're an a-hole. You're just a jerk. There is no, visible empathy. The other side, you're a doormat, where you let people walk all over you. As I've gone through this, we talked about the 4 walls. The intense, insensitive person is on the end of the a-hole, right? The person who isolates or has inactivity is at the other end. Well, the challenge is like to get to the middle. And on one end, you have empathy with no boundaries. The other end, you have all these boundaries, no empathy, meaning it's this hard, stiff, and kind of as you described, it's like if we as an organization say, hey, I'm not going to be the one that doesn't respond. Then you've created all these expectations and boundaries with no empathy, right? Hey, our expectation is if it is, you respond in between these work hours. Our expectation is that you respond to everyone via email in 24 hours, which someone just shared with me. That's their business model. That's what they do. We will respond to everyone. You can call us. We're sending an email. You could, go to our website. We're sending you an email. That's their process because they've created those boundaries with empathy, and people can stay within that line where they don't feel burnout because there's no place to like stop. Yeah. And the reason I asked is how old this person was, because you and I are old enough to remember days with no cell phones. Right. Like you didn't have email buzzing in your pocket. And I know one of the hardest things in my life professionally was the first part of my career. And, a lot of my responsibility was out of feed, was responding to the 11 o'clock at night on Fridays, like, hey, I don't have enough corn to feed in the morning, and scrambling to do that. So that was a part of my career. As I got into just consulting, I didn't have to worry about that. Then I got back into made a little career pivot where I was doing commodity market consulting. And part of my job was handling deliveries. And I'm like, I can remember, ruining a Sunday with my family because I'm trying to deal with someone that's out of feed. And that pressure, partly knowing because of the responsibility, I know what it's like to try to feed cows without, it doesn't work. They're going to eat. So they got to eat something. So I'm scrambling in that tension, which builds in me to try to come up with the solution, now affects my entire family. And, I think as we're talking about this and the idea of our insecurities and our fears, is there's kind of this idea, for example, that if you don't set expectations with your clients, that they're going to leave you.
Yeah.
And I would condition this a different way. If you set the expectations, you do the things with your clients and they leave you, then you shouldn't have had them as a client because they're not a person that values you. If you say, hey, I'm going to, here's how I work. This is my timeline. Some people 5 a.m. till 2 p.m. Great. That's their time. Whatever works for you, have it, understand it, express it. And if people don't like that, then it's their problem, not yours. And I think that's what we've come to this. We're so hyper vigilant about customer service that we deservice everyone in the process because
go ahead. More. No, this comes up all the time, right? Because we get into the sales training arena every once in a while with agricultural companies. And there's this perception, like we have salespeople who are literally out of breath.
Yeah.
Physically and sort of metaphorically speaking, just out of breath, feeling like there's never enough of them to go around. There's never enough time. And guys that are literally like, they're leaving church to go take a call or make sure that somebody's got feed or got seed or got fertilizer or whatever the input is that's required of that particular season. Right. And it's become really chaotic. And that's
here's where I want to tie this back. Those things are going to happen. That's life. Are you intentional about having a process how to handle it?
Right.
Are you intentional? Like I can remember we would do this when I worked for the company I worked for. It's called Commodities Plus, right? And when it came to holiday times, long weekends, you know what we all did? We called everyone and said, hey, are you going to have enough? Are you going to have enough? Can you take an extra load? Can you make sure we get through the weekend because it's going to be really challenging? I don't want you to have to worry about on Thanksgiving morning that you're out of feed. You're trying to enjoy time with your family. You have someone that is working in your business, whatever, and they're asking you. And then that goes down the chain because I wasn't intentional about doing my job.
Yeah.
And I think those are the skills that we have lost sight of because we have this phone right here where we don't have to. Let's go back 35, 40 years ago, right? No cell phones, no email. People still planted a lot of corn. People still fed a lot of cows. If they could walk to the house and they could call. Who are they going to call? You had to prepare. You had to be intentional. And here's what I would say today. The people that are best at that live the easier life and have the best served clients. But as I'm sharing that and I'm thinking back to a client that I worked with in my nutrition business in California. And he had a joke, don't confuse me with the facts, right?
Hmm.
Because, what his perception was reality. And he was also a person that thrived on being a firefighter.
Hmm.
I'm going to come solve problems. I'm going to solve problems. And so when we think about sales, if your persona is, I'm a firefighter, then you are the one out there, whether you realize it or not, are intentionally setting fires. So you get validation and value from putting out the fire. The best salesperson is the person that never even has to ever pick up a hose and put out a fire, because they're so intentional. They're so ahead of it. They're so intuitive.
Hmm.
That's the best leader. That's the best salesperson. That's the best sales manager, is if you're never having to deal with problems, they'll find you. But if you are not allowing them and having to put out fire, it means that you've accepted who you are, what you are, and okay with it.
So good, man. And I think, if I can just boil that into one really simple framework, I guess, for people to take a look at, is it's like, you're going to compete with Amazon anyway, right? You're going to compete with Walmart anyway. You're going to compete with the next online retailer, FBN, somebody who's going to, make it perceivably cheaper and easier for your customer. So let's look at what those things do. And I've boiled it all down, and this is a focus of our company at Momentum Company. It's why we launched Momentum 360, actually, because I got sick of going out and just having to sell another program, and I go sell $1.5 million, $2 million worth of training every year. And it's like, that's a great year and that's a great business and it's profitable. But guess what? Now I got to go do it again next year.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I was like, well, that's friction for us, but that's also friction for our customers. Right. And if you're a good salesperson, then you recognize like, oh, like that's friction. If that's friction for me, right, that's friction for them. And so how do we remove friction? Well, that's what Amazon does. They made it easy. They made it frictionless, damn near frictionless, to buy things. Right. Why do I shop at Amazon over Walmart? Because Walmart makes it harder to purchase on their app and in their store, right? If I can't use my Apple Pay when I walk into a Walmart, I got to use their pay system, so I don't go there.
Yep.
Right. I also don't like the store, but even if it was just comparison, like Walmart's right up the road from my house, I could just go there, right? Or I could go on Amazon, and they removed the friction. So
because they deliver, I don't have to worry about it. I need to buy something. I need to do something. I just go straight because they have lowered all of those barriers to entry. Now, here's the interesting thing knowing about Amazon is, like, no one wants to sell product on Amazon because they treat you horribly. There is no product protection, but they're not in that business. They don't care. Yeah. They are one thing and one thing only. They are so focused on the customer and doing whatever to meet the customer needs. They don't care about the retail side of it. And, as we're talking about this and kind of this understanding, all right, if you're going to compete against the Amazon, you have to play a different game.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how am I now removing friction from my customer's life, but doing it my way and associating myself with being the one or being the company or being the brand who made my customer's life a little bit more frictionless? Like, you're the one. If you call me up and you're like, hey, I can handle all these things for you, right? And it's going to cost you this, but no, I can, because I can associate that with how that's going to cost me less time and less stress and less whatever the problem is that I'm trying to solve. Even if I don't buy it right away, right, I start to associate a little bit of like frictionlessness from you. And if you're a feed salesperson or you're a seed seller or you're an agronomy seller and you're starting to think ahead and solve problems, like understand your customer's business good enough to know where some of those hiccups are and bring them solutions that solve for that, right? The real pain points, the real pinch points. Okay, now you're not just selling fertilizer. Any jackhole can sell fertilizer. In fact, I know the guys who sell the fertilizer to the co-op. I know a lot of them, right? And those guys will sell it to each other in the morning and then compete against each other in the afternoon on the same stuff. That's how this industry works. Absolutely. But now when it comes to getting it to the farmer at the farm gate, y'all are selling the same stuff again. Right. And then competing over each other. So it's not about the fertilizer. It's about, can you remove friction from that farmer's life and be better at that?
Well, here's an interesting piece about that. So I have a brother who works, he manages 2 fertilizer facilities. And he and I were talking about this, and again, it comes back to this idea. If, and a little bit the quote that I've heard, and you reference it, if you get into the race to the bottom, somebody's going to win.
Yeah.
If you race to the bottom, somebody's going to win. And unfortunately, the person that gets to the bottom and wins lost everything. And so it's just understand, and again, it's reframing this idea. And I think it happens in so many boardrooms, so far disconnected from the consumer or the salesperson, right? And there's probably people listening like, yeah, I get that. It's like, I'm told to go sell more, right? Go sell more. Like there could be companies, we're recording this the middle of November, you're talking about fertilizer, you talk about seed companies like, man, let's go sell an extra $100,000 worth of seed the next, 45 days. You know what happens if you do that, Mark? You're not going to have that seed to sell next year because guess what? That farm isn't going to plant twice the amount of acres. And when you disassociate that and understand what's our job, is our job to just sell product or serve a customer. And if you get caught up in the we're just transactional and we're just selling, then you're going to be constantly racing to the bottom. Hey, what you did this year was great, but next year you got to go do more. It's like, but you can't extend your footprint. Like, like it doesn't work. And so as my brother and I were talking, it's like this idea where people will come in and sell product at cost. You're going to have to let them. And if you compete in that business, it will kill you. It will kill your margin. It'll kill your culture. It'll kill your mentality. If you want to buy into that we have to be the constant low price, you will kill yourself. You'll drive yourself out of business because it doesn't work. Yeah. But if you're like, hey, yeah, I would love to service you, but you know what? You know where you can come on Saturday afternoon in the middle of, April when you need to get product? Yeah, we'll take care of you. Because we're fully staffed, because we understand those are important. Not with people that are burnt out, but we have enough staff because we built enough margin to take care of you. Where do you come? And we're not going to gouge you because of it. We're going to be fair. We're going to be market price fair. But our job is to be relational, not transactional. And unfortunately, in the day and age of the stock market to private equity, those things all get lost and it's miserable to watch. And it's just like, and here's the choice. I've made this choice. You've been around the business long enough. Are you going to work with those companies or not? And, as I sit around and as I get to, interact with different leaders and companies as you do too, it's like, yeah, I don't need to work with the people that are racing to the bottom. Like if your motto is we want to be the biggest in the industry, we're probably not a good fit. Now, if you want to be a place where people are loyal and they're well taken care of and, you look at your customers the same, great. We can go somewhere together. But it comes back to this very idea. Do you want to be an incubator or an incinerator?
Right. I love it, man. And I think, here's what I loved about the last 40 minutes is, we started to, I mean, first of all, it went incredibly fast. We started off talking more about the personal side of it, but we ended up more on the business end of it.
100%.
But it's the same problem.
Oh, absolutely.
Almost all this stuff is driven from people guarding their fears. I'm afraid that we might not make it. I'm afraid there might not be enough. I'm afraid that it won't be accepted, right? And sometimes the best thing I got is a price sheet to get some acceptance today. And I go to the farm gate with that, or I'm insecure, right? I'm insecure about my product, or I'm insecure about myself, or my certainty around, whatever the case may be. If this person doesn't buy from me, then what does that say about me? That I'm not accepted, right? And that's
rejection, that fear of rejection is, I've been there. And, it's the best place that you can get in sales or consulting. You know what? I can't help you, but Mark can. And that does more to drive relationships in business and trust, because all of this centers on trust. And we are in a world that is absolutely at a trust low. Like in our lifetime, in our, generation, I mean, it's at a low. Why? Because people are willing to say whatever to just get ahead. And it doesn't work. And so the best thing that I learned at one point is like, if you can tell, hey, you know what, that's awesome. I recognize your problem. I'm not the guy for you. Well, why not? Like, that isn't what I do. Well, what do you do? I focus on I focus on relationships. I focus on transformation. I want to make sure that your business grows. Because if your business grows, then we'll be in business together for a while. My job is not to try to sell you or undercut you or whatever else just to make a sale. It doesn't work for me. And I like that. I want to do business with you. Okay, great. Doesn't always work that way. But if they don't say yes, then you're better off not having them, because as I told my brother, as he's talking about this guy who just constantly grinds people down on price. I'm like, that's a person you don't have to go chase for money in December, at the end of the year. And that's a guy that you're not having to deal with at your son's birthday party because he's complaining about not having enough lime. Like, you don't need to deal with him. It's not worth it. Let him go. And then he's either going to be that other company's problem, or he's going to come back and say, man, I really appreciated how you had done, taking care of us in the past.
Man, as you described that, I think about a sales call that my wife recently had, and guy came off of LinkedIn, gets on the thing. He's like, hey, I know, you're going to really have to sell me as to why this is worth what I think you're charging. And we never even talked about price, but he's like, what I think you're charging, you're going to really have to sell me. She's like, well, I got some questions for you. And at the end, we'll qualify whether or not, you're fit to work with us.
Yeah.
And it flipped it around. So then he spends all of his time trying to, qualify himself through the answers to the questions. And at the end, he wasn't a fit. And she told him so. And he comes back and he says, okay, what do I have to do to qualify to be a customer?
Yeah.
You can flip the script.
Well, the first is, as he learned, is don't come in with that kind of a prick attitude. Hey, I'm better.
Especially with my wife.
It's just, it's not conducive to any healthy relationship. Oh, you're going to have to really prove to me. Really, dude? Because this is what I've learned about that in relationships. If I have to constantly prove myself, I'll never be enough. And if I'm never enough, then I'm constantly not measuring up in your eyes because you're always winning. It's kind of, if I can take another minute or two, it's the people that do you extend trust, or do you make people develop trust? Because I know this, if I extend trust, then there's a possibility that we can be at a 10 for 10. And if I sit here and make you justify and build trust, the likelihood that we'll ever be at a 10 for 10 will never happen. And that's not a fun relationship to work and be in. But if I know, hey, you're going to do things that probably disappoint me. All right, I'm going to do things that disappoint you. I'm human. Now, here's the difference. Can I own that and get better? Can you own it and get better? If so, then our trust can be great. But if I'm sitting back and I'm always waiting, it's like, when's he going to do more? When's he going to do more? You'll never be enough. And if you have that type of leader or boss, just go find someone else. There's other people out there. And I know that's tough and difficult, but there are, and it's a way easier life. And here's what I know is sometimes it's enough people leaving, or like what your wife did as far as saying, hey, I don't roll like that, buddy. That is not the way we do things around here. And came around, it's like, oh, I need to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, in that particular case, potentially walked away from a multiple 5-figure sale. But it's like, we don't need that. Like, that the stress that brings is not worth the revenue.
Not at all.
We'll turn it away. And then guess what? When we turn it away, like when you get really in tune with who you are, what you'll tolerate, what you don't tolerate, what you're about, it creates a magnetism. And magnets do two things. They not only attract, but they repel.
Yep. Well, here's one of the things. And I find this so often. Talk to a buddy of mine who, he was a senior sales manager in a bank. And we were talking about this several years ago. And it's like, man, if I were that level of a sales manager, I tell my salespeople, and I told this to my brother who's, managing fertilizer plants. It's like, I put zero sales expectations on people for a year to 2 years when they first start. Zero. What's your job? Go build relationships. Go learn about people. You have zero sales expectations. And when you do that, all of a sudden they sell a lot. As opposed to the people where you put all these sales expectations. All right, you're here, you're just out of college, you don't know anything. You got to go sell, in the next 3 months, $150,000 worth of seed. You know what you come across as? Desperate. Hey, Your job is to go meet every person in your region and just introduce yourself and say, hey, my name is Tyler. I'm, new for the company. I just want to, I don't know who you work with. You probably work with people that take care of you great. I just am going to introduce myself. And, you go through that process, and then maybe, hey, go take them golfing. Go take them fishing. Go do things that you want to, that you can add value to your life, and not be slimy, sleazy about it, but just how can we build a relationship so you can understand what kind of person I am? And eventually, maybe not after a month, maybe not even after 6 months, but if you show up like that and build your character and build your skills, after a year, guess what? You got business, because they're like, I like you. You're not trying to, shove it down my throat. And you know what? If I enjoy you coming and adding value to me and just caring about my business and who I am as a person, then I probably want to do business with you, as opposed to the guy who always has a deal and is always trying to force me. And no, that's me. I think more people are like that than not, but I also had to learn it the hard way.
Well,
because my insecurities kept me from being able to see that in the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
So true. And a great way to bring it home and to land it, man. There's so much here. This is probably a listen to again situation for those of you that have gotten this far. I would go back. I would share this with your team, especially if you got anybody who fits those symptomatic descriptions of intensity or inactivity or insensitivity or isolation, the 4 walls. That's good stuff. And you guys need to go back and get context around that. Tyler, how do we find you? How do we get in touch? How do we book you to come speak?
Yeah, so you mentioned LinkedIn. You can see me there, but you can go to my website, tylerdickerhoof.com. That'll show all the different offerings from the annual summit that I host, the Impact Driven Leader Summit, the workshops, the cohort groups that I do, the roundtable, and different webinars. So you can find out that information there, find out about the speaking, all those things. So, and as we had talked about, coming this spring of 2026, my book, The Things We Hide, which will go through a lot of things we've talked about today and so much more. So
good
thanks
stuff,
for having
man.
me, Mark.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the show.